Good evening, everybody. I apologize in advance if I seem a little bit off today. There's a lot going on, and having to research this particular terrible topic about this terrible human piece of garbage, and listening to the Tipster live stream and the subject matter at hand has had me kind of in a bit of a tailspin. So, I apologize if I am a little bit more temperamental or I seem a little bit less peppy than I normally do, but I'm here. We're gonna get through this one, and we're gonna have as good of a time as we possibly can. This particular topic was chosen or suggested by a channel member by the name of Rock and Ruin. He wanted me to cover the man that is arguably the most infamous child predator in Britain, and that is Richard Huckle. So some of this might be very graphic. I'm going to give you a trigger warning in advance, because there's going to be some stuff that is extremely, extremely fucky going on. And, you know, we'll just have to see how that goes. Is there something going on with the stream? It's saying there's no... Can everybody hear me? Are we live? Okay, guess we are. Something was weird going on with YouTube. Very odd. But again, we're going over Richard Huckle. If anybody is squeamish in any way, I suggest you leave now. This is going to be a rough one. Why don't we go ahead and start with who exactly this guy is, and where he came from, and why he is the most... we'll start where he came from. Richard Huckle was born in Ashford, Kent, on May 14th, 1986. He attended Harvey Grammar School in Folkestone, then attended college in South Kent. He was a regular worshiper at the Ashford Baptist Church. But if you're not already aware, this guy is somebody who very much likes young children, and apparently he only would show up to church if children were around. That's already not good. That's already not a good sign. Where his foray into the really depraved and disgusting began was when he traveled to Malaysia in 2005 after graduating from college. He was there from 2005 to 2006 and didn't actually move there until 2010, instead taking a bunch of regular trips to go and visit for a multitude of reasons. He ended up staying in that area after he enrolled in a short certificate in English language teaching to adults course through the British Council, and decided that he was going to freelance as a photographer in Kuala Lumpur. Good evening, Jonathan Stone. Good evening, Mike, as well. I know I saw somebody else earlier. I think it was Eric was in here earlier, but welcome, guys. He stayed in, like I was saying, he was a freelance photographer in Kuala Lumpur, and also apparently used his studies with teaching children and adults to stay in that area. He enrolled in an IT study course at the Kuala Lumpur Metropolitan University College, which he didn't finish for probably because he was too busy with children. And he worked as a part-time photographer for Nike Football Club in Malaysia between or in 2011 and 2012. So he did a lot while he was out there. Not a good. Hey, there's Rock and Ruin. This is the subject you requested, and I'm gonna try and get through it with as much detail as I can. But yeah, we'll see what happens. No, I wasn't early. I was a minute late. So no, you're right. Late and blatantly homosexual, which is not a bad thing. I was a little bit of a minute late because I was trying to get some pictures up that I'm going to show you guys later that are kind of nasty, but I think it works with what we're talking about. As I was saying, he spent a lot of time in Malaysia, but he also traveled a lot through Southeast Asia, which included Cambodia, Singapore, Laos, and India. We'll find out why in the near future. And allegedly, he would use his stakes in the community and would persuade pastors to invite him to orphanages so that he could teach these children and use that opportunity to take photos and videos of them. And he did. Oh, he did a lot. Now, this gets fun. This, or I wouldn't say fun, I would say interesting. Yeah, I'm not very happy about what happened with Hipster's live stream earlier. I'm just not in a good mood because of it, and because of this particular subject. However, I'm going to cover it, and I'm going to cover it to the best of my ability. If you guys want to go look at any of the sites that or articles that I use to get all my information from, I have everything in the description. It's a doozy, but he was caught in the most interesting of ways, I would say, because they really went through the ringer to find him. This started when the European police became aware of a particular website called the Love Zone that was apparently hidden by the dark web, quote unquote. Tipster's streaming right now, Rock and Ruin. I think you would see that. Yeah, he's still going. I just had to stop because I was doing my stream. But he this particular website was on the dark web. It was protected by passwords, encryption, and special software. It kept all of its users anonymous, and had a various amount of material, inappropriate material, that contained videos of babies and young children that was posted by tens of thousands of viewers or users. Yeah. In order to become a member, you obviously had to, participate. And in order to stay a member, you had to post escalating levels of content onto the site, which you can only imagine gets worse. Now, when they discovered this website, a task force in Australia called Task Force Argos decided that they were going to take it upon themselves to really dig into this website. The way they did this was they basically tailed the owner of the website. They looked in various chat rooms and forums and started to notice patterns of speech from the particular person that ran this website, one of which being a very distinct greeting of Highas. Hiyas. Highas. Yeah. This ended up leading them to a fake Facebook page. And even though this Facebook page was fake, there was a picture of a vehicle that they ended up tracing to an Adelaide childcare worker named Shannon McCool. once they did a little investigating into Shannon McCool, they showed up at his house. And when they raided his home and kicked the door down, they found him actively running this gosh darn website. Yeah, they caught him in the act of running this website. What they also did was connect him to a multitude of content that was posted on this site through pictures of his hands. And on his hands, or one of his fingers in particular, was a very distinct freckle. And this freckle could be seen in a multitude of content on this website, which also connected them together. How did this end up getting them to Huckle, though? Well, I'm glad you asked. They basically arrested McCool and assumed his role in running the website. And through doing that, they started to basically find anybody that was of serious note and track them. And guess who came up on their radar? Huckle. Huckle came up on their radar specifically because of how much activity within the site that he had and his level of aggression and activity in these sites and on social media when it came to children. They also noted that Huckle was going to be returning to the UK for Christmas in 2014 and tipped off Britain's National Crime Agency, who showed up at Gatwick Airport and arrested him through their Child Exploitation and Online Protection Command on the 19th of December in 2014. In his bag or his luggage, they found a phone, a camera, and a computer that was full of CP of varying degrees. And it gets worse. Oh my god, it gets worse. Though he was already under suspicion of a lot of disgusting stuff, he was given bail. And that lasted all of a week because his mother confronted him. And he admitted to his mother that he had RAPED'd children from the ages of 3 months to 13. 3 months to 13 years of age. He admitted to. You think it's bad now? No. It gets a lot worse. Trust me, it gets a lot worse. So, he was told, get out of our house, because one of the things that was contingent upon him being on bail was that he had to stay at his parents' house during the investigation. Parents didn't want him in the house, so guess what? He went back to jail. He was charged with 91 different counts, which included CP, RAPE of children under the age of 12, digital penetration, child abuse, and the facilitating of and commission of child sexual offenses by creating a manual for pedophilia. Yeah, he wrote a fucking book about it. He wrote a fucking book about it. We'll get to that book in a bit. When we get to his actual crimes in detail. And oh my lord, are they doozies? Yeah. Can you see why I'm in a mood today, guys? Can you see? I think it's pretty damn obvious. So, once he'd gone back to jail, and his parents had kicked him out of the house, he was held without bail, initially at HMP Lewes, but was transferred to HMP Belmarsh until his trial began, or the initial trial process started, at Old Bailey in January 2016. He initially pled not guilty, and because he pled not guilty, the prosecution decided there is way too much crud on these files There's way too much stuff that we've found that is just so darn horrific that we're going to have 3 separate trials purely to save the mental health of the jurors. 3 trials, 91 counts of multitude of things. Yeah, it was that bad. Though he pled not guilty at the initial hearing, during the preliminary trial hearing that took place in April of 2016, 3 months later, he pled guilty to 71 of 91 charges after he was told all of the information that they found would be shown beforehand. Because he decided to plead guilty to 71 of 91 of the charges that were more egregious than the other 20, those 20 were not pursued due to a little-known rule called the laid on file rule. This is basically a ruling or some sort of legislation that would only be applicable in England and Wales. Basically means is that presiding judge says there's enough evidence to present for this case for this case to be made. Basically, it's not in the public interest with all the information that's put together for it to need all 91 charges to be put out. You can, however, bring those back later if the presiding judge or the Court of Appeals gives you the go-ahead to do so. And in total, with all those charges together, he faced 22 life sentences for everything that he did. List some of them using the correct words. I did list them already, and I'm not going to say them again with the correct words, mostly because I don't want this to get struck down. Because it very well can be with this particular subject. Now that we've gotten over that first part of it, let's go into the evidence. The evidence that was found once he was arrested. And it gets so great, guys. It's so great. Sarcasm. Absolute freaking sarcasm. This is disgusting. He started his BS in 2006, mostly in Malaysia. He created an instruction manual called Pedos and Poverty, a Child Lover's Guide that was 60 pages long, told people how to groom children and distribute videos on the dark web, and was ready to be published by the time he was arrested. He also boasted in provable logs that were found through various sites on the dark web and social media that he really liked to abuse poor Asian children. And now I'm going to show you some nasty stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Let's show and read off some of these pictures. Here's the first one, where it says, impoverished kids are definitely much, much easier to seduce than middle-class Western kids. I still plan on publishing a guide on this subject sometime. Yes, he did indeed. Number 2. It will likely take something very serious to get me to stop or slow down, but if I'm not suffering consequences, what is there for me to learn from? Number 3, the 3-year-old I can have so much sex with that it's just boring. Well, at least she's now ready for business with funding. There's more. Would love to make small income off selling CP. There's more. If I were to transfer my skills learned from India and tried to use them in the West, I wouldn't last a month before I found myself in a cell. My freedom relies on the hush mentality of the locals on this kind of thing. I guess it's a bit similar to what we're doing in the 70s. Or what blank we're doing in the 70s. It didn't matter back then, but it is all coming out now thanks to the change in society's attitude. If India becomes liberated and I become professionally successful, maybe I could be facing the same wrath in 20 to 40 years. Also says, I'd hit the jackpot. A 3-year-old girl as loyal to me as my dog, and nobody seemed to care. There's another one. Last one. As long as I keep a broad number of contacts amongst the poor people I know, I'm sure some would be inclined for someone of high status, such as myself, to be caring for their kids for long or short terms. That's just some of the stuff they found. Yeah. I wasn't kidding when I said I was having one hell of a time researching this guy. My stomach hurts. It does. It really, really does. Now, it gets worse. There was up to 200 children that he had done these things to. He didn't have a preference. He went for anybody between the ages of 3 months old to 13 years of age. He did it all on his own. And most of this happened in Malaysia because he had ins with the locals. He used his pseudonym and said he was living in India to get away from some of this stuff, which, He also boasted about exploits on multiple pedophile networks on the dark web, which included him posting the film of him RIPing and assaulting children for sale via Bitcoin on the dark web via another website called True Love Zone. He also advertised the sale of indecent images of children on a site called Pedofunding, which he mentioned earlier. How did they come to 200 children, you ask? Well, guys, he kept an electronic ledger of everything he did. And even more fun, he used a point system. He used an effing point system. And here's how he scored himself. He would score himself based upon the severity of the offense against the child and different categories regarding the victim. This could be their age. This could be where they came from. Yada, yada, yada. Boy or girl. Age. You get the point. He'd score himself depending on that stuff. He'd also summed up each week's week dates against the name of victim, location, age, and sex. Now, if you want to know just how bad this guy was, in a matter of 1 year between November 2013 and 2014, he had given himself a total of 1,305 points. Can you imagine what he was doing to these children and how many there were? Keep in mind, only 29 victims were confirmed. His ledger had up to 200. I'll tell you why exactly that is later. What he would do is he would ingratiate himself with the community, and he would even go so far as to get in good with orphanage management and the people who ran orphanages, to the point where he would take children on day trips or walk them home after birthday parties. The worst story I was able to find was that of his quote-unquote perfect wife. He met a young girl at one of these homes where there were 4 girls, 4 sisters, and one of them he fell in love with, quote unquote. And this particular girl he wanted to groom to age so that he could have a home there with a wife who would help him continue his crap full time and would help facilitate the stuff he was already doing. Here is a quote of him talking about this particular girl. This is his own words. "I have gotten particularly close with one family whom I have known about 6 years. I have sexual contact with 4 of the girls in that family, and though the family obviously does not approve it, they try to work around it as they know I can be a potential valuable asset to them in the future. I feel my situation could strongly benefit me in that my partner is still quite young and I've known her since she was 7, and I can influence her young mind to mold her into the perfect wife. My ambition once married would be for our family to be like foster carers for children, temporary or long-term. With having such a long-standing relationship with my wife and being over 10 years older than her, I would hope I would be able to pacify and influence her into not reporting me, as I would make it clear to her that she would lose her middle-class lifestyle if I got busted. Marriage certainly is not sustainable for a pedo to a Western woman. There are women who would be safe, but they would be extremely unattractive. But you can get away with it a lot more if you live in and marry a South Asian girl." That is what he said about this particular girl he was in love with, quote unquote. Thankfully that never happened, but still. Yeah, no, Rock and Ruin, I don't think he was praising him. I was saying that he was agreeing with me that that's a lot going on in a span of just a year. It's not a good thing, it's a bad thing. And it was a lot worse, because that was only 1 year. And he's been doing it since 2006 to 2014. So, I know what he meant. He wasn't praising anybody. It's all good. Like I said, there are only 29 victims that could be confirmed, with 20,000 photos and videos uncovered. Though there were 200 on this ledger, they could not verify all of them, mostly because they couldn't get into the encrypted areas of Huckle's computer. And they couldn't do that because he would not cooperate with them whatsoever. So they were SOL. Interesting fact about this particular case, though, is that Huckle is only the 7th person to be prosecuted under Section 72 of the Sexual Offences Act in 2003, or of 2003. This particular act basically allows British nationals to be tried and convicted in the UK for child sex crimes committed overseas, and this is mostly an effort of sorts to prevent child sex tourism. He was only the 7th person that this was used against. I don't know how many after that. I tried to go look into some of this stuff, but yeah. Yeah, this is a dark subject, but yeah, we're getting through it. He was initially had a sentencing hearing that occurred between the during the 1st and the 3rd of June 2016, with his sentence actually being handed down on the 6th of June in 2016. He gave a particular statement to this that I'm going to read. And you're probably not going to like it. I didn't like it, but here's what he said. I really understand and acknowledge the true scale of damage it caused to the Malaysian community. I had hoped to escape this mundane life of solitude in the UK, yet was overwhelmed by the attention I received in Malaysia. I completely misjudged the affections I received from these children. My low self-esteem and lack of confidence with women was no excuse for me to use these children as an outlet. I am open and eager to rehabilitate from this offending behavior. I don't want to become a martyr to sex tourism in Malaysia. This was all my doing as a consequence of my immaturity, and I'm truly remorseful. That's a crock of crap. That's a crock of crap. I don't believe any bit of that. He knew what he was doing. He enjoyed what he was doing. And he would have kept doing it if he had not been caught. And it would have escalated, I will assure you. Now, though it was very much clear that this man did everything that he did, his defense tried to get leniency because of his young age, his claims of remorse, his having no prior convictions, and because there was a psychiatric report that said he had limited sexual experience with women and suffered depression as a teenager. Let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen of the audience, I suffer from depression. I have since I was a kid, prior to even my teenage years. I've never used that to harm children or anyone. That is not an excuse for any of it. So they can shove that straight up their booty hole. I don't buy it. Thankfully, he was sentenced to 22 counts of life imprisonment, all of which required 25 years before he was eligible for parole. Dev, you missed a lot. You're probably gonna have to rewatch this, because I've pretty much gone through all of the good stuff. I'm pretty much gonna be done very soon. Wasn't planning on it being a long stream, because I'm basically just going through this whole thing, and then I'll talk about a little bit later on what I'm planning on doing during the week, and yada yada yada. All that good stuff. Anyway, 22 counts of life sentencing. 22 life sentences in total. All of which were 25 years before he was even eligible for parole. The judge that presided over this case was quoted as saying, "You've pleaded guilty to as many as 71 sexual offenses. It is very rare indeed that a judge has to sentence sexual offending by one person on such a scale as this. In my view, you may well harbor feelings of regret, but there is no feeling of genuine remorse in this case." I agree with the judge. I don't think he was even remorseful. At all. He regrets being caught. That's what he regrets. Huckle obviously was put in jail, but there was a lot that happened with regards to the UK and Malaysia. Malaysian government had a lot of problems with the NCA. A lot of them. And I'll explain those to you. The biggest problem was that the NCA did help through a lot of charity events in the communities in which Huckle committed his crimes. However, they did not completely inform the Malaysian government exactly how bad this was, how deep this whole situation went. The Attorney General of Malaysia, Tan Muhammad Apandi Ali, asked for information about these crimes to offer counseling to the victims of these crimes on the 4th of June 2016. This is around the time when he was about to be sentenced. The NCA responded and said they provided enough details to help with the charity events and couldn't provide anything else until the trial ended. So they basically said, F you have to wait. They also put a media gag order out to ensure that all material could be removed to protect the victims. Okay, I guess I understand that. Rock and Ruin, from the multiple articles that I went into, I found 200, up to 200. I didn't see anything about 250. And this, they said that because of the ledgers, it was up to 200. I didn't see anything above saying it was above 200, and you could see the articles that I've listed. I went through quite a bit of them. So I only saw the number 200 multiple times. Still bad. But anyways, the NCA had realized how bad the situation was. Or not only, they had realized how bad it was once everything was said and done, and referred itself to the Independent Police Complaints Commission on the 6th of June 2016, which is the day that Huckle was sentenced. They did this because they had known about him attending 2 churches in the UK up until his rearrest, and they didn't talk to anybody at the church to verify whether or not Huckle had harmed any children there. They effed up big time and reported themselves to be audited because of it. That tells you a lot. Now, it wasn't just the NCA that had to answer for their BS. It was the British Council. The British Council, if you don't remember me saying earlier, is the organization in which Huckle took his CELTA course in 2008. They basically said that they had to reevaluate their procedures when it comes to these courses, but they said they would not take any further accountability for pre-employment checks and said that that was on the onus of employers. This is exactly what they had to say with regards to this. Richard Huckle completed a certificate in English language teaching to adults course in 2008, which provides training to individuals to teach adult learners. Following the course, we have no records to indicate he was ever engaged as a teacher in Malaysia with us, either for adult student, or children. They say this, but there are multiple accounts in which he used that particular certificate to get in with the communities. He used the guise of being a teacher, an English teacher, to get to these kids and ingratiate himself with the community. That's partially your problem. Period. The British Council was not the only person to be called out for this. The NCA was not the only people to be called out for this. The Malaysian government was also called out for this BS because of their particular laws for the situation. In atonement, they set up a hotline that people could give information for this particular person and allow possible victims to reach out and get help. The Prime Minister, Najib Razak, also put together a task force to investigate child protection laws to have a new set of them put out in 2017. This was what was mentioned in Wikipedia. I tried to look up exactly if anything had happened, but I couldn't find anything, so I have no idea. Regardless, though, they were criticized heavily for their lack of laws against child abuse and CP, with a particular person who is the chairman of Suryana Welfare Society for Children, named James Nayagam, quoted as saying, Malaysia should have CP and child SA as a severe crime with heavy penalties. We should also issue a severe warning at the point of entering the country about our strong stance. Huckle got away with it. He knew the relaxed atmosphere in this country. We Asians fall head over heels with foreigners. He had people fall into his trap. But regardless of where people come from, we must have that check and balance. And I completely agree. I forgive you, Rock and Ruin. It's a good subject to cover. It's just a pain in the butt to do because it's terrible. Now, you might be wondering, with the thumbnail I have, what exactly happened to Huckle? Well, as of October 13th, 2019, he is dead by the hands of a fellow inmate who was being held for sexual assault, Paul Fitzgerald. Paul was found straddling the dead body of Richard Huckle by security. Before that, I'll tell you exactly how he died too. He basically had done this as a form of poetic justice for what Richard Huckle had been doing. Now, you say it's a good thing, but this particular person, this inmate that did this, was an absolute nutter butter. Not a queen. Not at all. Because this guy is not a good person at all. He basically spent an hour torturing and assaulting Huckle before he was found, straddling Huckle's body in a pool of blood. He basically bound his hands and feet and gagged him, RAPED'd him with his own cojones and a spoon handle that he'd found from the kitchen. He broke his jaw. He took a little tiny blade, put it on the tip of a pen, and stuck it up his nose so that he would play with his brains. And then he strangled him with an electrical cable. Now, had he not been caught, he states that he would have cooked and eaten parts of Huckle's body. And that he would have done this to other inmates as well. So in my opinion, even though he says this was poetic justice and because of what Huckle did, I think it was more, he did it because it was convenient and he wanted to kill people. Yeah. So, there's that. The end of this. Fitzgerald was obviously put in solitary confinement, tried, and he was sentenced to life in prison with 34 years minimum before parole on 24th of November 2020. And so ends the tale of Richard Huckle. Yeah. Quite a tale, wasn't it? I'm not gonna lie, he deserved every bit of what he got. But I give no praise to the person who did it. Is in the prison system, even in the UK, even here in the US, if you harm children, you are the bottom of the barrel. And there's a thing called prison justice. This is prison justice. Plain and simple. So, all of that's out of the way. I am going to start wrapping the stream up and try to find a way to calm down. Because researching this, and prior to the stream, listening to what was going on with Tipster's stream, has had a shaking effect on me. So do not be surprised if I do not stream next weekend. If I do, I'll let you guys know on Twitter and in my Discord server. Discord server is linked in the description. No, it's linked in my About section, whatever. But I am planning on getting the Season 1, Episode 3 review edited and posted for you guys, along with trying to finish. I've watched it, Mike. I've watched it. I'm in the midst of watching it again and finishing up my review of that movie. And once I've got that done, I'll edit it and post it.
From the Primetime, bitch.
Oh, thank you for the $5, Miguel C. I really appreciate it. I will take care of myself. I will try to get everything out as best I can. I'm hoping to have the troll review out not next week, but probably the following week, and have the review for Dragula Season 1, Episode 3 out this week, so that you guys could see Reese and RBF and Kitten hanging out with me. But I may have a little bit of problems doing that because work has pretty much kicked my butt, like I said in the previous stream. Regardless of that, I will do everything I can to get you guys as much content out as I possibly can without destroying myself. And thank you for coming to hang. You guys have a wonderful rest of your evening. And sweet nightmares.